Sometimes I even find myself, even in trying to fulfill my ministry, getting distracted with the busyness, the to-do list, the must-do, the must-be there, and the willingness to please. One time I missed an important appointment because I had gotten so distracted and I was tired, and I decided to sleep in, thinking in my mind I had nothing to do that day, so I could afford to sleep in. It was a week and a half later. I was talking to someone, and something they said clicked in my memory bank. And I shouted out, "Oh my God!" And they're looking at me like, "What's wrong? What's the problem? What's going on? Something, you got a pain? What's happening?" There I remembered the appointment finally. I had to pick up the phone. The embarrassment of having forgotten an important appointment. I felt like 2 cents waiting on change. I felt like a heel for standing these people up. And so I picked up the phone, dialed the number, didn't know if forgiveness was even possible. I waited. I explained the situation. But I was feeling pretty bad because distractions had gotten in the way. Does this sound, even any of these stories, remotely familiar to any of you? Distractions get in our way. And so we can begin to imagine Martha. Martha in our story, tied up in knots. Blackberries, computers, cell phones, calendar events, to-do lists. Everything is geared to get in our way between serving God and worshiping God. And there Martha is caught. But I think Martha sometimes gets a bad rap. Imagine Jesus coming to your house for dinner. Would you be here in worship this morning? Or would you be at home trying to get ready for Jesus to show up? Everything has to be right. The wine has to be cooled just right, and you have to make decisions about, is it going to be bold wine or sweet wine? Is it going to be red wine or white wine? Now, you know I don't know anything about it, but that's what I hear people talk about. The dinner has to be perfect. The table has to be elegant. The standing crown roast beef has to be just so tender. Everything has to be perfect. None of us want to get to the eternal gate and have a bad rap sheet when we arrive there. And so Martha is moving around trying to get everything perfect, willing to serve Jesus. She eyes her sister and Lazarus, her brother, sitting at the feet of Jesus in the act of worshiping, listening to Jesus. Martha is frantic. Who wouldn't be? I would be. Wouldn't you be? Here you are running around the kitchen trying to get it all done and on the table and served, and here's your brother and sister, idle, sitting by, at least in Martha's mind. Distractions. They draw us away away from what's important. Distraction sometimes causes us to go into forensic mode and become angry with one another when we seem to think others are not helping in the process. We struggle in our church trying to find leadership for the various roles of ministry, and some become burnt out, feel like they've been trapped in their positions for years, while others seemingly just worship. So which is right? Worship or serving God? I think in this passage, Luke, on the words of Jesus, is trying to help us to understand they're both important. Our families are important. Our friends are important. Everything in our lives is important. But sometimes we just get distracted, not intentionally. We get distracted by trying to be productive, and we leave God out. Martha left God out. She became angry and frustrated. And that's how sometimes our lives are. Other times we find ourselves thinking like Martha, Jesus really doesn't care about the hard work we're putting in. Trying to love our neighbors, trying to keep the church going. Jesus really doesn't seem to care because he seems to favor Mary over Martha. But trust me, Jesus cares about both. Work without faith is useless, and faith without works is dead. The danger that Martha gets into is that she wants to tell Mary to come and help, but she's so angry by that point, she pulls Jesus into the triangle and tells Jesus to tell Mary to come into the kitchen. But sometimes direct communication in the attitude and the framework of love helps solve the problem. Jesus is not condemning Martha because we need the servers. And Jesus is not uplifting Mary as the worshiper over Martha. We need to do both. Listening to Jesus, taking the time to listen, helps us to know which direction we need to go in our lives and as a church. Listening to Jesus draws us a little bit closer to Jesus in our relationship with Jesus, and it begins to grow. Martha had one agenda of loving Jesus, and Mary had another. Mary could have listened to Jesus for a little while and then took on the responsibility of saying, I need to help. This is my guest as well. Jesus is our guest. He has invited us in. You have invited him in, rather. We have invited him in at that very moment we said, I love you, Lord. I believe in you. I trust in you. I want to be your disciple. We invited him in.